Oh, hello. So by now we have looked at chapter one. We've covered the introduction to what economics is. We've looked at the concept of scarcity, bringing in the concept of the production possibility frontier, and finally, we've looked at various types of economies. So based on that, we're now going to start our video solutions to cover these topics. So for this segment, I'm going to deal with two questions that come from chapter one, and then another segment is going to deal with some more questions that are examined that come from chapter one. Why is my approach in this manner? Because in the event that any approach or any type of question is picked up, I don't want people looking at the ceiling and thinking they did not prepare enough. I love it when people go into an exam and no matter how the exam is set, they can confidently take on the questions and know that they will come out of that exam room with good grades. If anybody has been around me, I'm sure you've heard me say several times, it's good that we can study together and we can make all these grades and we can even hope to sit next to each other. But in the event that life happens, you should be able to sit on your own and still write a test or an exam and still clear it. Okay, so in that very spirit, we have to cover everything that could possibly come out. But before we even go on in this series, first of all, I want to let you know that if the lecturer who is going to be taking in this course is the lecturer who took me, or if it's any lecturer in the Faculty of Economics, please know that you are not going anywhere in this course by mastering things, because those people are really dedicated to making sure that you understand concepts and you're able to identify with them using real life situations. So most of your exams are going to be centered around scenarios that test your knowledge. That's how come you cannot afford to start cramming this course when there's very little time left. If you really intend on doing well, you better prepare in advance. Okay. uh, I'm speaking this from experience, and I know that some people get irritated when I say this, but I'll keep continue saying it because it's part of my CV. I scored a 96 in a test in economics, and that 96 was as a result of me being able to understand the concepts that the lecturer taught. And the approach that I took when answering his test questions was to see to it that I answer things in accordance with the knowledge that he had imparted. So make sure you get the concept. So that's the first base we're dealing with in the pre-recorded tutorials. We got the concept, and now we're about to see how to answer using the concept. So at the end of this tutorial, please, on your Google platforms, for all of you that are enrolled in our service, I'm going to post the PDF for these solutions as well as the other solutions for other questions, so that in your own time you may go through these things and just be able to acquaint yourselves. I know that there isn't enough time in our life schedule for us to go through all the question past papers, but if I make materials available, I do believe that in your own time you're able to pass through things, and if you encounter questions in the exam, because the resources are there, you'll be able to say, oh, this is how that was answered, and that's how we answer. So in economics, the other thing that I need you to note is that you should be very cautious of the marks that are awarded. And if you have few marks, you can do the bare minimum, but if the marks are more, always go over and beyond. Okay, and you're going to see that style of answering in a lot of questions that I'm going to handle. I will be going over and beyond because I'm trying to get as many marks as I can out of the questions that have been asked. So I advise that you do the same. Do not do the bare minimum, always go over and beyond. Okay. All right, so let's begin. So this is a question from one of the past papers, and in the interest of time and what is happening over here, we are going to just take question 1A. Okay, we'll take question 1A, and that's the one that we're going to deal with. I would have taken uh, question 3, so sorry, question 3A. I would have taken question 3B2 as well, but then there's another question that has this, so I'm not going to tackle it here. We are just going to end on question 3A 1 and 2. Okay, so the question says, an economy is a cobweb of production involving multiplicity of factors of production in producing final goods and services. And then we are told list 4 factors of production. Then the other part is telling us to describe the circular flow of income in a simple economy. So let's start with question 1. List the 4 factors of production. So if you look at the paper here, there are 4 marks there, and the most natural instinct for you as a student, I'm sure, would be to just list them. So the 4 factors of production are land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. Okay, there are 3 of them. There's land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. If maybe you've been given 2 marks, it's okay to just name them like that and move on and say to yourself you've gotten 4 marks. But like I've said, all lecturers in the Faculty of Economics, they want to see to it that you need to name your mark. So you should know that if you name a land of a factor of production for the 4 marks given, it would carry more marks and it would make more academic sense for somebody who has learnt as you have learnt to not just name it, to say what it is and possibly give an example, which is the approach I would take in answering this. So if I were the one answering this question, I would say there are 4 categories of factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And then from there, I would go on to list them. Like land includes all natural resources that are used in production, for example, water from rivers, or land that is used for farming, falls in the category of land. And then we also have labor. So labor just includes all human efforts, whether physical or mental, and it is all human effort that is used in the production of goods and services. For example, if a farmer is planting crops in their farm, that is a form of labor, that's physical labor. Or if there's an accountant preparing financial reports, that is a mental form of labor. Okay? And then we have capital. Most people, when we hear capital, we think it's money for starting up a business, but that's not the reality of it. So capital simply refers to all man-made tools and equipments that are used in the production of goods and services. So when you talk of capital, think of things such as office buildings, machinery, or you can even think of things such as logistics vehicles, pool vehicles that are owned in a company. So all those, they constitute capital, because capital is made out of fixed assets as well as non-fixed assets, and it does not necessarily limit itself to finances or money. So know that capital is any tool or equipment used in production of goods and services. Example, office buildings or machinery. Okay? Then entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship simply constitutes the ability to organize factors of production and to be able to take risks as well as run a business. So for example, if you decide to open a restaurant or a boutique, that is entrepreneurship. And also hosting an online tutorial service like Pinnacle is a form of entrepreneurship. So that is how I would put that. In the PDF that I'm going to upload on your Google Classroom for all those of you that are part of my tutorials, you will get the answer scripts with things logically answered and arranged in the manner you would be expected to answer them in an exam. Okay? So that for when we have answered that, we can consider that we have gotten our 4 marks. We move on to the next part. Please always make sure that as you answer, you inform the marker that you know what you're talking about. That is very important. It's great relevance that you inform the marker that you're very knowledgeable of whatever you're talking about. Do not just end in shortcut answers. Shortcut answers do not give you the full marks awarded. Okay? Let's move on to the next part. So the other part is saying describe the circular flow of income in an economy. Now, if you watch your tutorial, you remember that this is the first economic model that we looked at in chapter 1. So the circular flow of income simply explains how money, goods and services move in an economy, and the circular flow of income has 2 sectors, 2 main key players in the industry, those being households and firms. You should also take note that in a simple circular flow of income model, there are no governments, there are no banks, and there is definitely no foreign sector. The reason for this is because we want to simplify the model so that we can make it easier to understand and for us to be able to relate it at a larger scale when it comes to reality. As you know, models simplify reality so that we can get basic concepts. So now here you've been told to describe the circular flow of income in a simple economy. Every portion in the syllabus, you should be aware that if there's a diagram involved, know the diagram, because that diagram will help you score marks. So these 10 marks given here, please take time to know the circular flow of income diagram. Know it. And then, because what you're going to do next is you're going to draw the diagram in order for you to make the description. Another point for you to shine and show that you know what you're talking about. Even if they've not told you using the aid of a diagram, when you see the marks and you know that this particular question, it involves a diagram, draw the diagram, make your description, okay? So, as you can see here, I began my answers with the diagram, okay? So this is the diagram of the circular flow of income. I forgot to label it, but please, for you, you should label it, okay? The circular flow of income. You need to put the title there. And then I drew everything that is involved there. So now that the diagram has been drawn, these are marks given to you. The next part you're going to go for is the description that you've been asked. So you would say things such as the circular flow of income just shows how money, goods, and services move between household firms and markets in an economy. So from the above diagram, you can see that the households provide factors of production such as land, labor, and capital to the firms. What is an example of this? An example is when a farmer provides land and labor to a maize milling company in Lusaka. So by them doing that, they have sold the factors of production to the firms, as can be seen here on what's going here. So from the market of factors of production, we sell our land, labor, and capital to the firms, okay? And then thereafter, in return, the households are going to receive an income. So this income can be a wage, rent, or profit. Okay, here the firms are going to pay the people or the households. The firms are going to pay the households for whatever factor of production that they are selling. So if you sold land, you would get the return on that. If you are renting out land, you get your rental. If you are selling labor, you get your wages. If you are running a business, you get your profit, okay, for property and whatnot. You get your profit over that. So for example, in our example, I always like to run with the same example so that we do not get confused and we're able to correlate things. So in our first example, we said the farmer providing land and labor to a maize milling company in Lusaka. So building up on that, when a farmer earns money for renting out the land or for working the mill, they are going to get a wage or a rental, okay? And then thereafter, from the factors of production that the firm has bought from the household, they are going to be able to produce goods and services, okay? So these goods and services are then going to be used to what? To be sold in the market for goods and services, as what is happening there where I have indicated. Going back to our example, for example, when the milling company decides to produce milling meal for sale, they are going to produce a product, which is milling meal, a good, which is milling meal, which they are going to come and sell here in the market for goods and services, okay? And then after they've produced these goods or service, the firms can then sell those goods and services in the market for goods and services. And then in the market for goods and services, you should note that the households buy the goods and services. So when they buy these goods and services that are sold in this market, they start to spend the income that they gained from selling the factors of production in this market here, the market for factors of production. So when that income is spent, it in turn becomes revenue for firms, okay? Firms gain revenue because over here, as you can see, just to highlight and emphasize that a little bit more because sometimes these things become confusing. You go to a firm, you sell, let's say, your factor of production being labor. And when you sell a factor of production for labor here, the firm decides to buy it and you get an income in terms of a wage, okay? And that wage comes with you here in the household. Then this same firm produces the good or service from that labor that you're operating. So let's say you're working in a finance company, and in that finance company, they're paying you a certain wage for you doing finance work with them. That salary, when you're paid, you come back home with it. On the other hand, this firm in finance is going to sell its good or service in the goods or service market. In the goods or service market here, you are going to find that people from the households are going to buy these goods and services. So, for instance, for a company going back in the market for goods and services to sell loan products, another person from the households may go to buy a loan product from them, and they may start spending the income that they have through payment of what? A loan settlement. You go in the market for goods and services, your service there is financial assistance. You get a loan of maybe 100,000 kwacha. That 100,000 kwacha, because you don't pay promptly, they divide it over a period of 5 years. Every month when you get paid from the income you are getting at your job, you'll be there parting away. Maybe they've told you that you can contribute 2,300 every month to your loan. So this money, when you contribute every time back into this service where you got this loan from, it now becomes what? Revenue for the firm. So many dribbles here. Let's reduce it. So it now becomes revenue for the firm. If we go back to our example of the farmer and the land and the milling mill company, you find that households go back in the market for goods or services to buy milling mill, okay? And this milling mill can be bought from a shop or a milling company. So when you buy that from there, you now get to the last part of the cycle, where the firm again uses the revenue they get from selling the milling mill in the goods market to pay for the factors of production that they have bought the factors production market, which starts the cycle again. So this is the circular flow of income. In the detailed tutorial, I'm sure you can relate to the example that I gave of the hungry lion worker and all these other aspects of how money circulates in a particular economy. So I'm going to make available the notes again for the people that are on the tutorial platform. You should be able to have access to this PDF so that you can acquaint yourselves with how to answer this question and how to frame your answers in order for you to be able to score a good amount of marks. Okay, let's move on. So we have this other question here, and this question we are going to answer it in full, this particular question. And the question is saying, explain the three economic systems that societies have used to answer the question, what, how, and for whom to produce. So then the second part is saying, on 22nd June 2022, the BBC reported the following story: Afghan earthquake, at least 1,000 people killed and 1,500 injured. Use the production possibility frontier to comment on this story. Okay, so we're going to start with question 1. So what you need to know first off is that all societies face the economic problem of scarcity because resources are limited while needs and wants are unlimited. So in order for us to deal with this issue of scarcity, societies must answer the 4 economic questions which we discussed in our tutorial. I'll keep referring back to our tutorial. And we said that the 4 important economic questions are what to produce, how much to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. So the way that a society chooses to answer these questions actually depends on the way it has organized itself. And the way it organizes itself is what we call economic systems. So therefore, we can define an economic system basically as the way a country organizes how it produces, distributes, and consumes goods and services. There are three main types of economic systems that we can talk about, as what was covered in our previous tutorial. And these three main types of economic systems include the command and control economy, market economy, and then there's also the mixed economy. So now we are going to look at each one of these and see how societies answer the four economic questions using this form of organization. So the first one is the command and control economy, which is also called the central planning economic system. And it is a type of economy where a central authority, usually government, makes all major economic decisions and answers the four questions on what to produce, okay, how to produce, uh, for whom to produce, and all that. So that authority decides which goods and services are going to be produced. And in answering how much to produce, they also decide the quantities to produce for that particular good or service. The central authority also then answers how to produce by deciding how they're going to channel their resources. This can be either the land, the labor, the capital, and they're going to organize it for the production process. So they also determine the production process that they're going to use. For example, are they going to employ more labor, or are they going to employ more machinery in executing a certain task? So all that lies in the hands of the central authority. And then finally, they also decide for whom to produce. So the central authority determines who receives the goods and services that they are producing for. Okay? But ultimately, what you need to know is that in the command and control economy, the factors of production are collectively owned, and there is very limited decision making in the private sector because the central authority takes the upper hand in making decisions. Then the other form of the economic system which exists is the market economy. So in the market economy, you find that decisions are made through a decentralized decision making process using the price system. Okay, in this form of economy, individuals and private firms own the factors of production, and the price signals what is scarce and what is abundant. So what to produce and how much to produce is actually something that is dictated by the consumer's demand as well as the producer's supply. Okay, that is what consumers are willing and able to pay and what suppliers are willing and able to produce. So that is how those determine what to produce and how much to produce. And then the firms also decide how much to produce by choosing the most efficient way of combining their resources. And they answer for whom to produce by setting a price in which the goods that are being sold are able to go to those who are willing and able to pay the market price that is set. So that is what happens in a market economy. Finally, we can look at a mixed economy and see how they handle the four economic questions and how those help to answer the questions and organize a society. So the last one is called the mixed economy, in that it combines elements of both the command and control economy as well as the market economy. And in the mixed economy, some decisions are made by the government and others are made through the market system. So the government may provide for public goods such as education and health, for which they can decide on what to produce, how much to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. On the other hand, private individuals and firms operate in markets using demand and supply to answer the four economic questions. So this is how the types of economic systems and societies have used the four important economic questions to answer how to allocate, distribute, and share the resources that their various economies have. So that's how you'd answer that. Again, the PDF will be available in the Google Classroom so that you can go through it and frame the answers in your own way. And please remember to use economic language as you will be answering these particular questions. Okay, so let us move on. We are now going to look at this question for using the production possibility fronted to comment on the story, 10 marks again. And I will tell you again, if you know that a particular topic has diagrams, know the diagrams so that you can be able to use those diagrams for you to make your justifications in the manner in which you answer. So this scenario that is posed to us on an event such as an earthquake, it is trying to test our knowledge on what that would mean with shifts with regards to the production possibility frontier. As you may be aware, the production possibility frontier is just a model which shows the maximum combination of goods or services that an economy can produce when resources are fully utilized. And an event such as an earthquake causes destruction to resources, which results in the reduction of production levels, and this can cause a fall in the maximum output that an economy has. So the government then is now faced with the decision to shift resources from producing consumer goods to emergency relief as well as reconstruction for places where there is destruction of property and damages. So this comes at the opportunity cost of producing less of other goods in order to channel the resources to reconstruction as well as emergency relief. And what this implies is that it's going to change the production possibility frontier by causing a shift inwards in order to represent that output will be lowered and there will be slower economic growth and there will be fewer goods and services that are available because resources are being channeled towards relief as well as reconstruction. So on this particular part then, when you talk about that shift, it's the part where you're now going to be required to input a diagram. Okay, you're now going to input the diagram so that you can be able to highlight. By the way, this part should have Y and this part should have X. Okay, you're going to be able to highlight the changes as well as the shifting inwards of the PPF. Hence these two arrows here to signify the reduction in the output levels as well as the slowing down of the economic growth, okay, and the switch of resources to reconstruction in order to beef up relief at the opportunity cost of other goods and services that would normally be produced. So what you need to know is that a distraction such as an earthquake reduces production capacity, and this is what leads to the shifting of the production possibility frontier, as we have seen in I and J of this diagram. I'm sure the PDF will be much clearer, where it moves from initially being at point A to H to I to J in order to deal with that particular shift in the affairs of this economy. And then you also see that immediately after the earthquake, maybe some resources may be idle or they may be misallocated. And this can cause the economy to operate at an inefficient point. So you need to indicate that inefficient point inside the PPF. And it is what is marked L over here in my diagram. So that's how you would answer this question. Please, whenever you know that there is a diagram that exists on a particular thing and there are a lot of marks that are located, know that it's your moment to shine and add those diagrams. So these are the two questions that we have for this question bank. Now I'm going to add some more solutions in the PDF scripts for you to use, and then of course we have the other questions that involve a little bit of calculations as well as drawing of the PPF, still covering on chapter 1, sorry, that we're going to be looking at in our live discussion. But for now, we can end here. Thank you so much, and I hope you have learned one or two things, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good one.